LCTR here, and astonishingly, Planetside 2 is 9 years old, but this isn't a swan song video. The latest developer stream talked about a whole bunch of new stuff that's going on in the very much active development of the game. Wrel, the lead designer on Planetside 2, hosted the stream and talked about some of the highs and lows of the past year. Clearly, the world situation has impacted everyone, but also some events like high-profile team members leaving have sculpted how the team has navigated 2021. From the outside as well, as someone who saw Planetside 2 not really feel like it made much ground from a core development viewpoint post-launch for quite a while. To look back on the past few years and see the mechanical additions that have been added to the game, from Bastion carriers to what they actually talked about in this stream, it feels like Planetside 2 is making confident strides forward in a way that I'd always hoped it would do. And before we start, just a quick aside, if you do enjoy this video, please do tap the thumb up button. It helps me out with YouTube and discoverability and all stuff like that. Thank you very much. The big ticket headline for the new Future Edition has to be Oshur. The long talked about and seemingly long wrapped in tinfoil and put back in the fridge continent is finally being uncovered and put back into the development oven, and what a painful analogy that was. Clearly what we saw isn't ready for the release. There was talk of a development approach in passes, learning from previous experiences of making continents. Such carry forward ideas were things like Sunday garages and using the terrain to help avoid such areas from being bombarded by vehicles. There are some key features to Oshur though, not just that it looks like a vacation spot from the other continents, but also that it doesn't feature warp gates like we're used to. There is some lore reason for that, but to be honest, I was lost in the moment, thinking about future cosmetic swimwear that I really hope is added to the game. The island or archipelago nature does also create a unique feel to the continent. Ridges spanning the water create natural choke points for people who want to make quick work of moving between the neighbouring landmasses. But it's the water, which isn't its final look by the way, that did hold one major surprise. That is, after all this time, Planetside 2 is getting actual enterable water with a working buoyancy system. I have to say, I did not see that coming at all. It immediately spawns any number of questions, of course. What happens to tanks? Does infantry drown? What about aircraft? Well, the word is that wheeled vehicles will float and move slowly across the surface, semi-submerged. And the Sunday has to be the boat of choice here. It's had fairly nautical lines around its hull for years now. And yes, you can ride on top of the vehicles while they're in the water. So surely we're just a few expansions away from a fishing minigame, fingers crossed. Tracked vehicles are less buoyant. They will sink and drive along the newly designed sea floor, complete with underwater rocks and other flora and fauna, where we would also find infantry, so it turns out those armoured suits are heavier than they look, but there was no word on whether there's any sort of limited breath system, although I'd guess not, considering the sort of distances we're talking about. Aircraft, such as fighters, can enter the water, but like all of the vehicles, they'll be slowed significantly compared to normal movement. However, larger aircraft, like Galaxies and Mag Riders with their boosters lit, will float to the surface like all wheeled vehicles do. The design ethos for the water on the whole is one of choice versus using the bridges to move around. It's somewhere you opt to go through rather than stay in place and operate in. Furthering that idea is the limitations that the water places on weapon use. We were told that only projectiles will work, but as that's kind of most of the guns, we'll have to wait on real specific details. Either way, all projectiles will be massively impacted by the water, just like in real life. So think hugely reduced projectile speed and hence range. Also discussed at length was the audio work being done to really bolster this new theatre for the game, and although they're not in a position to do real-time audio effects, they are planning to simulate the way in which audio changes while you're underwater, so explosions and other noises on land will be much fainter or silent, a bit like someone trying to talk to you from the side of the pool while you're swimming underwater, whereas the explosions that are underwater will be extremely prominent to everyone submerged. The final neat touch was that this new water buoyancy system will also work across other bodies of water on other continents. And in fact, to test this out, they plan to flood a large part of Indar on the PTS to allow people to check it out, see how the water feels, and give feedback, so keep your eyes peeled out for that. This initial look at the water system did immediately look like it would add some real fun and difference to normal traversal around the map. We're used to seeing tank columns being spawned and navigating terrain, so imagining giant flotillas making their way from island to island does sound like a lot of fun. When Wrel spawned that Mag Rider underwater, the way it floated up to the surface, or even just how the Sunday bobbed relative to the water, did feel really well done and believable. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of tuning that needs to be done for each vehicle, but what we've seen so far looks like a good base to work from. Out of the water and after towel down, we had a look at some of the placeholder buildings for 2 new facility types that are hoped to be added to Oshur on their way as well. First, a satellite building called the Interlink Array is planned, but the one that really seemed to be more ambitious and potentially more likely to get cut if things don't go to plan is the giant Space Needle-shaped building. This second base is intended to be only accessible by air, so mounting attacks and weathering defenses sounds like it will be a significant challenge. Got my fingers crossed that this does make it to Oshur's launch. Outside Oshur, but not outside its influence, we learned of 2 new single-player campaign chapters that are now live in the main game. These, named Distant Shores, are setting up how this new continent is in the world of Planetside 2. So like before, they are freely accessible to those with a subscription, or you can spend certs to access it if you prefer. Different from the previous chapters though is that this time the 2 parts are effectively running concurrently. You can do one part and go straight into the second if you want. This means the access dates for parts don't create such a limited window as they did before. Also, that end date is subject to change. As they said, they'll only release Oshur when it's ready and won't be on some specific date just for the sake of it. We also got a look at the recently launched cosmetics, also any nautical or piratey theme. And I have to say they look particularly crustaciously good on Vanu characters. These are obviously in reference to Oshur as well, but it did give the devs some opportunity to talk about Player Studio and how other outsourcing work allows for much of this content creation. They did add that they're not looking to immediately add more artists to that roster of creators, but if you are making cool things, then make yourself known to the dev team and you never know, your work might be in the game sooner than you might think. I should say that since we last talked about Planetside 2, they've also redone the new player experience with a whole new space and tutorial to introduce players to the sometimes bewildering happenings of Planetside 2. There's education about factions, time spent on how to read the map, but it was a new voiceover that I really wanted to mention. It was when the first single-player campaigns were added that I mentioned that it would be good to have voice acting for some NPCs in the game, though I did recognise that this would be an expensive proposition and a significant amount of work. So I was extremely happy to hear the new voice work being part of this overhaul of the new player experience. And don't think that it's we got some dev team family members to read out a script. The lines are performed by Dawn Bennett, a professional voice actor, and are all the better for it. It honestly does sound great. I wanted to talk about this because, as I said, this isn't the cheapest way to do things, but I'm happy at this point in the game's development that there are resources there to put into things that the devs decide to, and for me, hasn't always felt like it was the case during some parts of Planetside 2's life. I'm in the position where I'm yet again looking forward to things in the future of this game that I fell in love with almost a decade ago now. From me getting a beta key from Higby on some promotional event that he was doing at a trade show, through to now when we've finally got those Bastion characters that people dreamt of all those years ago. But with Oshur, there's no sitting back. There's more in store, more new and unique experiences in this unique FPS game that still has no direct rival after all this time. So what do you think of how Oshur looks? What do you think of that water? Are you looking forward to getting your feet wet? Let me know all of your powerful thoughts and feelings by leaving a comment below right now. Like always, I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this video, please do tap that thumb up button, leave a comment, even just saying if you agree or disagree. It all helps me with the great YouTube algorithm and really helps support making me make videos just like this one. If you have been with me on this channel since I first uploaded Planetside 2 videos, then thank you so much for accompanying me on this ride. It's been a pleasure, and here's to even more adventures in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all well, and I'll see you next time. Take care.